Hey everyone, this is Steve Wright, and I'm here with my friend Jordan Reesner, and you're listening to the SCD Lifestyle Solution Podcast number 26. So Jordan, man, how you doing?
Hey man, I'm doing good. Just hanging in there. We just came off an awesome weekend. We're coming off an awesome podcast, so I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I don't know how many people listen to podcast number 25, but Dr. Allison Seebecker is pretty amazing.
Yeah, she actually invited us to her SIBO course. She had an 8-hour course, and we talked a little bit about it at the end of the last podcast. But Steve and I just, man, learned so much in those 8 hours. It was like I had to sit on my couch all day Sunday after that.
Yeah, my brain was hurting, and I think the most amazing thing is I'm pretty sure I forgot as much as I learned. There was so much knowledge in that course, so I can't wait to watch it again, take more notes.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. So if you got a chance to go check out podcast 25, learn more about small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and what Dr. Seebecker's been working on, definitely check that out. It's pretty awesome new stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely on the bleeding edge of research and what other doctors are doing with patients. So she's amazing.
Man, I thought I told you to stop using that bleeding edge analogy when we're talking to people with UC and stuff.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. All right. Anyways, enough of the chit chat. So we got some Q&A questions that had built up in the queue. So we decided to empty them all out. So as of now, we're out of questions. So if you have any more questions, and you're listening to this, you want to ask us about anything, please go ahead and submit your questions. You'll see a link at the end of this post, and I think there's links all over our site. And for those of you who have submitted questions, I just want to thank you. You're giving us some material, and you're helping other people because if you have a question, you're not alone. Other people have the same question. So
All
I
right,
think with
man. Well, I'm ready.
okay, cool. Well, I think with that, let's get rolling then.
All right, I'm gonna fire the first one at you. It's a short but a long answer one. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Have you guys ever thought of doing a comparison with other SCD-based diets out there? It would be very interesting. Thanks.
So anonymous, this is a great question, and I think I talk about this like every other day. So we've totally thought about it, and I think I have several draft posts that have gotten started. They've never gotten published regarding this area. So I could probably go on this topic. Jordan and I both could for well over an hour. Maybe we'll have to do a podcast in the future about it or something. But I guess just a high level overview of other SCD based diets out there. There's tons, probably 20, 30 many or so that probably all share about 80% of the same concepts. And so when you start to really branch out and try to look at all these different diets, or at least as I have, you start to, I for a while I got really overwhelmed. I couldn't really understand how did all these people arrive at pretty close to the same conclusion, but not the same conclusion at the same time. And when it comes from a mathematical and science background, which is where I'm coming from, it's really hard to accept that there's possibly more than one right answer and everything. So for me and where I'm at with it, I think one of the biggest breakthroughs I've had is trying to look at the diets. Number one, trying to compare and contrast them. Where are they the same? And their rules, their meta rules, and their like finite detail rules, and where are they different? And then also taking like a step back and kind of looking at them and saying, what are the goals of the diet? So in other words, like, and that's usually kind of hard to decipher because right, every diet's goal usually is either to lose weight or to make you, Superman, super healthy or something. So I mean, that's not what we're looking for because we all know that these are supposed to make us feel better. So then I think you have to keep going back farther and say, okay, so who created this? It's obviously usually an author of a book or, nutritionist, something like that maybe. And what were their problems? What background are they coming from? So in other words, what lens were they viewing the world when they decided to write the book or write the Bible on this diet? Because I think that's really important. You know, were they building off other bodies of knowledge, like so several degrees and maybe some like different areas of science or something like that, biology, anatomy, when they developed this? Or is it just kind of like a story of how they stumbled on all these different concepts that worked together and it worked for them? And then you also have to look at, who's used it so far. What do they report? what happened to them, and then again, where were they coming from? So if the author of a diet had problem X, and then a bunch of people try it and they have all these different problems, but they're not problem X and doesn't work for them, then that's a good sign that it might only work for problem X. And then if you find some people who all, it all works for problem X, so like IBS, for example, if the author has IBS and then everyone who has IBS tries it and they all see results, but people with celiac disease don't see results, then, we can definitely confirm that this diet isn't for everyone. It's just for maybe those one specific people with IBS or something like that. So, Clouds, that was a crazy ramble, but those are the concepts and the questions that are always bouncing around in my mind when I read about a new diet or when I think about things like SCD versus GAPS or versus Paleo and Primal and versus FODMAPs, which I would say are the top SCD-based diets out there right now. Now, there's a lot of other different ones. Like I said, there's probably 10 to 30 of them that all kind of have the same meta rules or 70 to 80% the same. But I guess, if you look at SCD versus GAPS, they're both designed to deal with digestive problems. GAPS is even more focused maybe on like autism spectrum and some of those disorders. And so they get pretty much almost the same conclusions, right? I'd say maybe like 80% or probably almost 90% the same conclusions. They differ on things such as, juicing, dairy, no dairy, the types of probiotics you can use. And those are kind of like fine details, but they do have, big time implications for the people that it's designed for, which is people with digestive problems. So I think both diets are great, and you kind of have to weight the different bodies of science and the different detail rules there. Now, if you look at SCD versus Paleo or Primal, they're coming from a different lens, right? The authors of these diets or the people who are designing them or coming up with them, they're kind of like a more active crowd. Some of them did have chronic diseases, but for the most part, they were looking at more mainstream diseases, I believe, like diabetes, obesity, heart disease. They weren't necessarily focused just on people who have digestive issues or just people who have psychological issues or autism issues or anything like that. They're more of possibly an active crowd, I would say, who are just focused on long-term health and really how do I maximize feeling the best that I can on this, on this world while I'm here. And I think they bring a great lens to it beyond that, which is that they looked back into more biology, anatomy, and just how do we evolve as humans. They bring that sort of lens, which is really key, and I don't think that matters as far as the other lens where they weren't necessarily having digestive problems, but I think that's where you'll see that the detail rules really aren't there in this diet. They get the same meta rules kind of right, no wheat, no grains. They're kind of negative on dairy, because SCD is pretty negative on dairy except for some very special ones. So Paleo and Primal are pretty much against it except for some special forms like raw and fermented. So I think they agree on the big time rules, but they don't get down to the nitty gritty that would really affect digestive people. So you'll read a lot about people who feel better on those diets who had digestive problems, but you also read about a lot of people who don't necessarily get better. And so I think that's just a function of the fact that they have sound stable rules that agree on most of the SCD principles, but again, they weren't designed for people specifically with digestive problems. And I think just to get off that and keep going here with the FODMAPs, I'm not sure really how everybody likes to say that, but I think this is really new, and I won't say the term that I like to say, but the research is really starting to just roll out. And I think if you look at the meta rules of FODMAPs versus SCD and maybe GAPS, FODMAPs breaks a lot of the rules. So they're maybe only like 70%, 60, 70%. They like to allow some different types of grains and some starches and stuff. So it gets a little gray here. I feel like they're digestive focused, which I liked, so I think we can learn something from them. But they're very, the detail rules are different, the meta rules are different, so I almost feel like FODMAPs is sort of something that can be encompassed into SCD. It's based around fructose malabsorption, and with the way that we preach for people to do SCD is to, test everything, right? Even if it was allowed on the paleo diet or something, and you'd been on SCD for a really long time, a year, and you hadn't seen anything, then just test that too. Maybe it's dark chocolate or something. So if you had dairy intolerance or if you had fructose intolerance and you wanted to incorporate food maps into SCD or GAPS, it'd be the same thing. You just test it with the 4-day rule that we always talk about. So you could easily do SCD and not even know about food maps, but if you were going along and you tried things like broccoli and onion, which are high in food maps, and they didn't agree with you, if you're doing the diet our way, you would automatically not be eating those things and be feeling better because of it. So I think food maps is kind of a breakthrough in research, but I really don't think that we really know how to write or know how to incorporate it yet, because I think they're kind of dancing around the issue there. So, Jordan, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
I think that was a great 5,000-foot overview. I think that, like you said, we could spend an hour to 2 hours just going through the three diets there that you just talked about. So I think you did a great job, man, and we'll definitely have to open that up later on in another podcast.
Okay, cool. Well, my voice is getting hoarse, so I should feed you a question. This comes in from another anonymous. They were diagnosed with ulcerative proctitis a year and a half ago, and they've had symptoms primarily blood, mucus, gas, and bloating for the past 4 years. Never really had diarrhea until the past few months. Now they say that they're on day 15 of the SCD diet after trying 7 months of an elimination diet based on an IgG test. They have noticed immediate improvements. The gas is gone, the bloating is gone, the urgency is down to once a day or less, and even had one day a few days ago with no blood or mucus, which is amazing, they say, and I would agree, that's awesome. So they say that they are using dairy, and their question is, when using dairy, once it's introduced, can you use any of the SCD legal dairies, such as butter or hard cheese? Or do you need to introduce each of them one at a time? Thanks so much.
That's a good question. And first of all, I want to just say, acknowledge the great work that you've done switching from a treatment that was very unproductive to, like 7 months on an elimination diet that didn't do anything for your symptoms to one that was really productive in just 15 days and eliminated your gas, bloating, and reduced your urgency, because that is awesome. And I'm glad to see that you're close to having the blood and mucus gone. That shows that you're doing some good healing and moving in the right direction. Now, first I have a caveat, and then I'll answer your question. And you mentioned that you still have blood and mucus, and you had one day where it was almost gone, but it's not completely gone at this point. So with that said, if you're going to continue on dairy and you're still not getting completely rid of the blood and mucus in the next 30 days, then I would stop dairy for 5 to 7 days and see what happens. Because remember that your colon is only about 5 feet long, and because you have ulcerative proctitis, that usually only affects 6 to 8 inches of it. So we're talking about a small portion here. So the fact that you're still having specific symptoms from ulcerative proctitis, that might indicate that you're still having a food trigger causing the problems, and my assumption is that that could be dairy. But to specifically get to your question, if you're using dairy, that means you have full access to all the SCD legal forms. Now, that includes butter, dry-cured cottage cheese, hard cheeses, and the SCD yogurt. But it doesn't have to mean that you skip the 4-day rule. So I would probably treat each of those dairy foods just like it was a new vegetable or new fruit, and it should be tested using that 4-day rule. So for example, you might start with something like ghee, which is more widely tolerated and purportedly 100% lactose free in that way. And you could move on to the SCD yogurt and then hard cheeses and butter and dry cured cottage cheese from there. But always make sure that you're using the 4-day rule to introduce things methodically like an engineer would. And each type of dairy product is going to have a little bit different degree of casein protein mixed in there, and it's going to affect you a little bit differently. So you use caution in that way. But I think that's all I got on that, Steve. Did I get everything?
Yeah, I think so. The only thing that I would say is like you said, each type of dairy is going to have a little bit more of a different type of protein or fat or anything. So like the easiest way to go, I think, as far as the most amount of fat, which nobody really reacts to, would be ghee, butter, and then on to something like the SCD yogurt or something. So
Perfect. All right, man. Well, I'm going to keep rolling. This is the next question. Says, hi guys, I'm a celiac, gluten-free, and low-carb for 6+ years. still having digestive issues, just started SCD. Specific question number 1, what's the deal with pencil poop? Does it suggest inflammation in the colon and or impaction blockage? If you're not familiar with the term, think type 5-6, but skinny skinny. And thank you guys for providing a place where I can talk about poop.
Okay, thanks for the question. And if you give us your name and email next time, we might be able to invite you on the show, and then we could all talk about poop together. I think it'd be kind of fun. But you're welcome, and let's get into this question. So I will answer your question first with a question, and that question would be, has it always been this way? So as far as you can remember, or at least in the short term, you kind of want to think about it maybe in short term and long term, have you always seen these type 5 or 6 skinny pencil poops? And the reason why I want to know that is if they're mixed in with some bigger logs, kind of some bigger poops maybe, that's going to give you an indication of that could be more serious or not so serious. So for instance, I think everyone's probably experienced this type of poop, but if you've recently made a change and this is just a recent change, that doesn't indicate like cancer or something. But so that's just something to really kind of go back and kind of take a mental inventory of how your poop has been changing over the last year or so. So if, say, for instance, all you can remember is that they were like this, now this is going to be a much more reliable sign that you do have a major problem, such as a stricture, an impaction, or a blockage happening. Also, if you're prone to constipation as well as this, so you're not going, you're only going like once every 2 to 3 days, that type of thing, and every time you do go, it's pretty skinny like this, that's definitely a very, very reliable sign of compacted stools, and that these skinny stools are just the little bit of feces that's squeezing by. And so that's going to be something that you want to get into, talk with your doctor about right away. So there could be some other things, like there could be, like I said, the strictures, or could be like tumor growth, something like that. So it's definitely a good indication that you should see a doctor and get a better opinion on it, better view of it, I guess. Now, if this is just a recent development and you've done some Googling it and you're kind of freaked out and whatnot, but it hasn't always been like this, it's probably a much more reliable sign that you're experiencing some fast transit time right now. And this is kind of normal if you're starting SCDs. A lot of people, including myself, we would kind of in the first month or so kind of rotate between a couple days of fast transit and then a couple days of slow transit. So you might not go, but every other day, or then you might go like 3 days in a row and then not go for 2 days, that kind of thing. So you could do something like a stool transit test where you take a few activated charcoal tabs and then you try to track how long it takes before you see some black poop come out. And this is kind of a test that you can just kind of, it's pretty crude, but they say that if you do that and you track it, less than 12 hours is too fast, 12 to 24 hours is optimal, and over 24 hours is slow. But if you're experiencing other issues like low stomach acid and you do have diarrhea mixed in with the skinny poops, it's much more likely that you're just having fast transit time and that's causing that. So hopefully you can pull out the answer that you need from this answer, but I guess it does basically just has to do with what's been happening to you, what's your history, and kind of your lifestyle factors that go along with this. But if it doesn't go away, you should probably go see a doctor about it.
Hey, great work, man. I just wanted to jump in and add that I, too, have experienced some very nice pencil poops in my time. And I also wanted to comment on the fact that this is the first time where you're the one that has to answer the question about poop and talk about poop. So I'm pretty excited about that.
You're excited that I stole your thunder?
Yes. Yes, I didn't want to be the poop talk guy anymore, man. I needed a break. But because I've had my break, I'm going to jump in and let everybody know that what helped me the most with my pencil poops was, I didn't have a history of constipation or impaction in any way. So for me, when it started to happen, I was having diarrhea 10 times a day. So skinny poops was an improvement, but it wasn't ideal, obviously. And I Googled and freaked out myself. But what it ended up being is just, like you talked about, the too fast transit time, the sped up motility of my digestive system. It was still a degree of loose stools for me. However, it was an improvement. mine didn't go away until I really got my motility more balanced out through digestive enzymes and betaine HCL, and then also removing dairy as a food trigger. So, if you think it's going to be a sign of increased transit time, like Steve talked about, you want to look for probably a food trigger from one of the four horsemen, or if you're not taking enzymes or betaine HCL, look into both those things too.
You just couldn't leave the poop question alone, could you?
No, I just couldn't, man.
Okay, enough with the poop for now. Here's the
Yes.
next question from Chris. It's for you, Jordan. So, hey guys, thanks for the podcast. They've made transitioning into the diet much easier. I was diagnosed with intermediate colitis this past March. My GI isn't sure if it's Crohn's or UC at this point. And I have been SC legal for the past few months, except for the rare cheat when I'm away from home and haven't adequately prepared. As this is a transition, I'm learning to cook foods in bulk and better prepare myself. I'm feeling pretty good, but I want to start the intro diet, build a food safe zone, and add foods from there. My question concerns the ground turkey I've been using. Aside from the turkey, it contains rosemary extract. Do you know anything about this additive? If so, is it SC legal? Thanks for all your help, Chris.
All right. Okay, Chris. So to get right to your question, rosemary is SC legal, so rosemary extract is as well. In fact, I think if I remember correctly, it's one of the filler ingredients in the GI Pro Health SC legal Omega Max fish oils. I will add that, I'm always suspect of like big chain store-bought meats, especially like ground meats, like ground turkey. So just make sure there's not, secret natural flavorings spun in there that might be bothering you. And because I'm weird and I actually am going to try to find a way to make this non-poop question about poop, I'm interested in the fact that you mentioned that you're feeling pretty good, but you're motivated to start over with the intro diet and creating a food safe zone, because that suggests to me that maybe you're still having some symptoms that are pushing you to make that decision. So you might need to be testing something like dairy-free or egg-free if you're not yet. As I always look to the four horsemen of SCD setbacks first before I look at something like maybe an ingredient that might be, pretty minute in your ground turkey. But who knows? It could be a source, coming from the ground turkey. But if you're that interested in finding something, you could always look at a local farmer or just a nearby local butcher as a direct source of ground turkey, where you can actually watch them ground it up and make sure there's no additives in it. That's always an option too that people forget about. So hopefully that gets all your questions answered, and good luck, man.
Yeah, I gotta say I sympathize with Chris on this. This stuff pisses me off. I hate it when people add additives into the meat before you even have a chance to cook it. So, Chris, if you're wondering, is this rosemary extract contributing to my problems, try a different brand, man, or just give it a rest with the turkey extract or the turkey for a few days and keep everything else the same. See if anything changes. The other thing that I know that Jordan and I used to do before we kind of like had this figured out was, at least what I would do is I would rotate brands of meat a lot. And I would always be checking them to see if they changed their labels every time. So for instance, like Jenny O ground chicken or ground turkey, like a year and a half ago, didn't have any additives, or at least some of the ones that I would find didn't have additives. Now they all have additives and this crappy stuff like natural flavorings and that kind of stuff, which you have no idea what that is, but it's probably not SCD legal. So just be aware of that. Maybe try a different brand or go without it for a little while. Do the things that Jordan talked about, maybe find a butcher, that kind of thing. But I gotta say, that stuff pisses me off.
Yeah, man, that's like a whole other podcast. We could get into like how they use the miscellaneous extra parts of a cow to clean it with ammonia, and then like tumble it and sort of mix it into your ground beef so they can maximize the usage of it. That kind of stuff pisses me off too, man. Sometimes it's just nice to actually watch a butcher take the steaks and ground it up into your meat so you know what's in it. But obviously not everybody has the ability to do that. If you can, buy a cow.
Truth.
All right, cool. Well, let's keep rolling. I got another good one here for you. All right. Hi, Steve and Jordan. I've been on SCD for over a year now, but I'm kind of stuck and I can't get any further. My stool varies between Bristol 1 and 6, constipation and fermentation. So I've done your 3-day baking soda test, and I have to admit that I have no belching at all. That would mean that there's no stomach acid in my belly, I guess. what do you do then? I have another problem with probiotics. Whenever I start taking probiotics like Kirkman's Lactobacillus acidophilus, SC legal I suppose, I get terrible bloating, smelly gas, and very severe stomach pain, and I have to stop. What do I do now? My biggest problems are pain, bloating, gas, and constipation. Since all the D have stopped, but I frequently have fermentation in my intestines. I don't tolerate dairy products at all, so I don't use yogurt for probiotics. Thank you for this fantastic website. It gives us suffering with IBD, IBDS, a hope in the dark. Best regards, Jen Zolay from Denmark.
Okay, thanks, Jens. This is a great question. I guess so. To back up to the baking soda test and your question up there about the no stomach acid in my belly, I just want to say that there's always going to be some acid unless you're on like a extremely heavy dose of a PPI, like something like Prilosec or something like that, that's actually shutting off your ability to produce acid. You're always going to be producing some, just like in your case and in my case when I did the test. Nothing. Like I think it used to take me like 7 minutes to 10 minutes to burp when I first did the test, so it was pretty bad. Um, so you said that your stool is varying between the 1 and 6, and this is exactly kind of something that was happening to me before I figured out I had the low stomach acid, and then I started using the Betaine HCL. So I think you're right on here. I think that getting the stomach acid handled, it's the stomach acid is the pH. It's going to set the pH, which is the signaling from digestion beginning to end. So after it leaves the stomach, the pHs have to be correct in every single stage all the way to your colon in order for the timing to happen properly, for the digestive enzyme release to happen properly, all that stuff. So if it's off from the beginning, it's no wonder that you're going to have slow transit one day and have fermentation and then fast the next day. So I think you really need to start using Betaine HCL right away. Again, just want to make sure that you're not on any steroids, any NSAIDs or anything like that, because that raises the risk. But you want to start with Betaine HCL, like one pill, and you want to have that with a protein meal. And then you slowly build up each meal until you feel like a warm or burning sensation in your stomach area, not in your esophagus, but actually in the stomach area. Sometimes people will get some GERD symptoms, some acid reflux symptoms, and think that's it, and that's not it. It's actually definitely more in the middle of your belly, and it's not in the esophagus. So once you reach that, say it took you 6 pills to reach that burning or that heat sensation, that's going to mean that 5 pills with any decent protein meal is going to be your standard dose. And you're not going to want to take any Betaine HCL if you just say you had like a fruit smoothie. Not going to want to do that. So the other thing that I would say when you're kind of alternating between the different 1s and 6s, constipation and diarrhea, is that you're going to want to go with Prozymes or some sort of enzymes, because you are in Denmark, maybe something more near you, and you want to get, if you're doing Prozymes from GI Pro Health, you want to be doing at least 2 per meal. At least that's what seems to work best for almost everyone that we talk with. So maybe you could get some Digest Gold from Enzyme Medica or something like that, and sort of match the dosage with another brand that's SCD legal, but I think that's really going to help if you're not doing that. I have seen, and we have talked to other people who react from the probiotics, and if that's giving you the reaction right now, I would say just stop. It's a sign of several things, I think, but most doctors that we've talked with and most people who had this happen, they never really figure out exactly what it was. But it could possibly be some pretty bad SIBO. So again, I want to reference podcast 25. Definitely go listen to that. It was all about SIBO. This is something that Dr. Seebecker told us about, so something that you might want to check into. You can get a lactulose breath test done. You want to go with a 3-hour test, and that should give you an indication whether or not you have SIBO. You could also get some parasite testing done. If you've been on SE legal for a year or so, and you don't have, if the supplements that we just talked about don't take care of it, at that point it's probably time to get a SIBO test or a parasite test or something like that done to further understand what might be going on.
That was a lot of good info packed in, man. Nice work. I think maybe I just want to remind everybody about the corticosteroids thing and the fact that you always want to use caution with Betaine HCL if you're taking corticosteroids. They can aggravate gastric ulcers if you already have them from the corticosteroids. So Just always use caution and talk with your doctor about that as well. Official disclaimer over.
Good stuff, man. Thanks for keeping me in check.
Perfect. Let's keep rolling.
Okay, cool. Here's question 6. I think this is from a different Chris. Hey guys, I was diagnosed with colitis in March of this year. Been following SCD for a few months. My recent blood work shows I have elevated liver enzymes. I know extra intestinal problems can occur in those with IBDs, but I would like to decrease my liver enzymes. I have increased my fat intake since starting SCD, and I've been using the GI Pro Health digestive enzymes for a few weeks now. Do you think that decreasing my fat intake will help alleviate my liver enzyme problem? What are other possible solutions? Thanks for all your help, Chris.
Hi, Chris. Great question. Again, I'm going to have to turn on the disclaimer again. We're not doctors. We're just really cool engineering dudes who are super weird and like to do this stuff as a hobby. But here's what I will share with you on it. Elevated liver enzymes are generally not the result of a high-fat diet. That's usually somewhat of a misconception. So adjusting your enzymes or your fat intake is probably not going to help with the liver enzyme count, and it probably might even hurt over time. And without seeing a full blood workup and more information about your lifestyle, it's hard to really pin that down. But we'll give you a couple ideas here in hopes that you might relate to one of them and be able to check it out further with your doctor. For starters, just at a general level, hepatitis or mono both can cause elevated liver enzymes, so that's something basic that you could get checked out. Another thing to look at is hemochromatosis, which is an iron overload disorder, and that can cause people to absorb and store too much iron. In that case, elevated liver enzymes will be present. But you can go in that same regard and get further testing with your doctor. That's going to help you find something like that. Specifically, you want to get a detailed iron panel with ferritin. That's going to look at things like UIBC, TIBC, iron saturation, and ferritin all together, and that's going to give you data whether or not you're having excessive iron storage, which could give you signs of iron overload or even the particular hemochromatosis disorder that I just talked about. And then in general, inflammation can cause elevated liver enzymes, and in some cases, just reducing inflammation with things like fish oil or even just doing SCD for a long period of time can help. But that's something you want to look further into if you can't rule anything else out. Again, you could look at the Rob Wolf fish oil calculator to see how much fish oil you can load up on, over a 3-week period to help kind of just massively reduce your inflammation. But in general, just following SCD over time, 6 months to a year, is going to do wonders for reducing your inflammation. But always, just do a follow-up with your doctor. If you're storing excessive amounts of iron, like I talked about, that can be problematic. So you want to rule that out in this case. But I think that's everything I got. Steve, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to throw a couple things in there. Again, we're not doctors, so we could be way off base here because we don't have your labs in front of us. But for instance, elevated liver enzymes can be how do I say this? They could be a descriptor of a lot of things. So, for instance, if you run a marathon the day before you get your blood drawn, you'll show elevated liver enzymes. If you did a strenuous workout and you're kind of in a rundown state, you'll probably have elevated liver enzymes. So if they're slightly elevated, this might even be an instance where you just might need to get your blood work done a month later, a week later, and they might be back inside the reference ranges. If they're chronically elevated, obviously you have a different issue on your hand, but it's not going to be part of your fat intake. And Jordan already mentioned Rob Wolf, but he's also done some posts about the paleo diet and fat intake and how the paleo diet will actually, on a higher fat intake, which again is sharing the same principles as SCD. SCD is even a cleaner diet than paleo, so SCD is going to be even a better choice. Will help people who have elevated liver enzymes, which are usually people like who have celiac disease and that kind of thing. So if you search that, elevated liver enzymes and paleo, Rob's post will be one of the first posts that comes up, and he links to some studies. And there's even some stuff out there that's starting to come out from some of the more leading edge bloggers that are saying that if you're exhibiting any signs of metabolic functionality, metabolic function problems. So if you have like high insulin or high glucose and something like that, where you've been eating a lot of sugar, maybe you're overweight, it's likely that you're going to have elevated liver enzymes because you have non-alcoholic fatty liver. And that's something that you can get tested for. Your doctor can do an ultrasound and check that for you. So that could be also a problem that's cropping up. And now that you've gone off of that high sugar, your body could be slowly breaking down the non-alcoholic fatty liver, and that could elevate the liver enzymes as well. So that's just a theory again. I'm not a doctor, definitely, but I'm just relaying the stuff that we've seen. So
Nice, man. Let's keep rolling. You ready?
yes.
All right, question 7. My 14-year-old daughter has severe ulcerative colitis, 26 days inpatient this winter at the time of diagnosis. She's currently on Remicade, Flagyl, and is weaned from 80 to 10 milligrams of Prilosec. Prednisone weaned from 60 milligrams a day to 0 milligrams a day was successful. That's awesome, by the way. We're anxious to get off all this medicine and are doing many natural things, including strict adherence to SCD. Can Betaine HCL be safely combined with Prilosec, or do we have to wait until she is completely off the Prilosec?
Great question, and I just want to say that's awesome that you're working so hard to get off all these drugs and that your daughter's hanging in there and just is so committed to this, especially that prednisone wean from 60 to 0. That's awesome. The Prilosec wean should be 10 times easier than the prednisone wean, and if you're only at 10 milligrams, I would question your doctors extremely hard why the heck you're still on the Prilosec. Betaine HCL and Prilosec should not be combined. They are basically 180 degrees from each other. Prilosec's working to make sure you produce 0 stomach acid. Betaine HCL is essentially stomach acid. It is acid when it gets into your body. So it's not going to hurt your body when it's in the stomach, so don't worry about that. But it is basically acid. Like if you were to take it and just hold it in your mouth, one of those pills, too long, and it actually opened up in your mouth, it would hurt really bad. So they don't combine at all. Prilosec's a PPI. Like I said, it's going to do everything possible to shut off stomach acid production. So what you're going to want to do is get off the Prilosec right away. I don't understand why your doctors would still have them on there if you've already gone from 80 to 10 anyways, unless that just happened. But what normally does happen as you come off of PPIs is there's usually sort of a rebound phase. And this happens actually with any drug. Because it's just what happens when your body's natural systems have to take back over and start doing the things that the drug was turning off manually. So what's going to happen most likely is that the stomach acid will spike a little bit because your body has been working really hard to overcome this drug for a while now, or her body is. And when you come off of it, the body's been ramped up trying to fight, up to 80 milligrams of Prilosec because it's the natural thing for the body is to have stomach acid, not to not have it. So when you come off of it, expect sort of a spike in stomach acid for the first, 4 to 10 days or so, and then it's going to level back out because the body is going to kind of slowly come off of that spike. It's going to realize that the Prilosec's not there anymore, and so it's going to kind of level off. And usually that level is much lower than where it should be for normal stomach acid. So right about that 2-week period is probably when you would want to start to either do the stomach acid test, the baking soda test, which is the 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda first thing in the morning, then wait and see how long you burp. Anything over 3 minutes is basically like 2.5 to like 3.5, 4 minutes is okay. Anything over like 3.5 minutes is probably low acid. So that's when you're going to want to try the Betaine HCL. But I would say get off the Prilosec, wait 2 weeks, and then try the Betaine, because I think at that point is when you'll actually be able to get a decent gauge of what her Betaine dosage is going to be. If you start too early, you might be in the phase where the body's producing more Betaine, more stomach acid than what it normally would because it thinks it's still fighting Prilosec and it's not. So just be on the safe side here, and also run it by the doctors.
I think that's great, man. I think the only thing I'll add too is just the best thing you could do would be to get a Heidelberg test. But it drives me nuts when they put people on Prilosec because in this case, an actual condition of excessive stomach acid is so rare that it's usually just kind of standard procedure to throw a PPI in there, especially with the prednisone, with the corticosteroids. But man, it just makes things so much worse. So, if you really want to be sure, if you're really worried about taking Betaine HCL safely, after you go off the Prilosec, you could have a Heidelberg test done, and that's really going to show, one way or another whether you have excessive or low stomach acid. But the stomach acid burp test that Steve described was pretty good home test that you can do that'll give you good indication. But definitely discuss it further with your doctor for sure.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I'm not saying that it definitely is a condition, too much stomach acid, but when you're coming from the lens that we are in the digestive disease realm, where people are having digestive problems of all kinds, even if it's not a disease, it's just IBS or something like that. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but we haven't had anybody yet email us and say, hey, I tried Betaine HCL and I actually had high acid. So just throwing that out there. Okay, so Jordan, you ready for the last question of the day?
I'm ready, man. Let's go.
All right. So very brief from Anonymous. What if you have to take antibiotics?
Haha, the dreaded sentence of antibiotics. That's a great question, and it's one we've covered quite a bit in the past. And I'll get a little more in depth this time and say that it kind of depends. Like, antibiotics have a bad lens in the digestive disease world because a lot of us have been programmed to think that antibiotics are the reason that we have unbalanced gut flora, or they've contributed to sinus infections 50 times when we were kids, are the reason that we have poor gut bacteria, and that's probably likely. But in some instances, antibiotics can really help. Like in podcast 25, when we just talked to Dr. Seebecker about treating SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Or if you're taking an anti-parasitic to treat a parasite that, has been bothering you for years. In those cases, they're really going to help. And it's going to end up a much greener pasture on the other side once you're through it. If you're talking about just antibiotics for something like a sinus infection or an ear infection, that's a bummer because in some cases there's a lot of natural things you can do, like in the case of a sinus infection or just with a severe cold, you can actually open up probiotic pills or powders and just put live cultures right in your mouth and hold them in your mouth and just don't drink anything or eat anything for a half hour, and that can really help because they'll get in your sinus cavities and they'll help fight that infection. Some things like strep throat, you're probably going to want to go with an antibiotic because it's going to be, you don't really want to deal with what might happen if you don't fight it naturally. So our usual recommendations when you have to take probiotics with antibiotics, and it's going to help make sure that it lessens the impact on your overall bacteria, because an antibiotic, while it kills bad bacteria, it also kills good bacteria. So ramping up your probiotics, if you can, a couple of days before the antibiotic, at least the day of, and then following. If it's like a 10-day course of antibiotic, you want to keep taking probiotics, probably double your normal dosage for the next couple of days afterwards till it's out of your system, and then go back down to your normal amount. Some people feel the need to take Aspulardi to prevent Candida from overgrowing when your defenses are down, when your good bacteria are down. That's an optional thing too. I'm kind of give or take on it. But to get peace of mind for me, if I had to do an antibiotic round tomorrow, I'd probably just ramp up my probiotics and I'd be totally okay with it. And usually in the end, especially if you're treating something like SIBO, you're going to be much better off after the round of antibiotics than before. And just sticking to SCD and taking probiotics is all you really need to recover on your way out the other side. So that's all I got to say about that.
Good stuff, man. I think the only thing I got to add on that was that sometimes antibiotics they're a necessity. I mean, they're like one of the greatest medical inventions of the last 100 years. So for certain diseases at certain points in times, you're going to want to take them unless you want to die. So just do what you can to try to maximize keeping the rest of your gut flora alive, and just be thankful that the medicine world has figured out a way to keep you alive and kill off whatever it is that you need to kill off.
On that note, man, let's wrap this baby up.
All right, dude. Well, this is a good podcast. Just want to, again, thank everyone, including the anonymous people that are sending in questions. Please send us some more stuff so we can do some more of these podcasts. We usually try to get 6 or 8 questions done, and right now our queue is 0. So that's the blanket call for you to click on the link and submit a question to surveymonkey.com. and then we can keep doing these awesome podcasts. So I just want to thank you for listening to podcast number 26 of the SCD Lifestyle Solution. This was Steve Wright and Jordan Reesner.